Today's show is going by the title of Pride Before the Fall. If you were anyone who understands pride, if you're a biblical person, this is a saying that comes from a biblical phrase that is used a lot. And while it is stated by people from all walks of life, and the saying normally goes, pride comes before the fall, right? And it comes again from the Bible. Meaning wise, it means people who are arrogant or overly confident are likely to fail or suffer a downfall. Proverbs 16:18, if you are a biblical person, if you are just someone that uses this in a cliche form and more of just a saying, you know what, this is a warning. You know that this is a warning that excess pride, arrogance, or overconfidence can lead to mistakes and ultimate failure. And today's episode is about some of that pride, some of that arrogance, some of that overconfidence that has led to a fall. You know what it is. We're gonna ask you like we ask you every week. Please like, comment, share, tag a friend, tag a forward, tag anyone that you know, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel and the podcast. We normally do the intro. We're going to get right into it today. You know where you at. The theme music, maybe we'll play it at the end. The reason is because I don't want to be too proud. I don't want to be too arrogant. We got people's time and attention, so let's take full advantage, man, and hop right in on the first topic. And for me, the first topic, when you hear the title, pride comes before the fall, and this situation, the title is Pride Before the Fall. You gotta think about this week's story of all stories. Lane Kiffin, who I'm calling the Wolf of Ball Street. Not Wall Street. When it comes to ball, big time, money making, revenue generating football, with the new hires calling themselves GMs, with the new business model that requires you to figure out allocation and do revenue share, with all of the external factors, whether it be collectives, as they were called, and name, image, and likeness, third-party payers, with all of that money involved in the new frontier of college sports, and with football being at the head of the table, Lane Kiffin is the wolf of Ball Street. Lane Kiffin this week acted like the scorpion. We've all heard the parable of the frog and the scorpion. They're on one side of the water and they're talking, and the scorpion wants to ride to the other side on the frog's back, and he promises that he is going to treat him the right way, and they get to the other side and the scorpion bites the frog, and the frog's like, why'd you do that? You promised me you wouldn't. And the scorpion replies, because I'm a scorpion. Lane Kiffin, in his behavior this week, being the first ever college football coach to walk away from a college football playoff berth to go to a new team. Brian Kelly arguably was going to be the first, but they didn't make the playoffs that year. It wasn't 12 teams then when Notre Dame was going through this a few years ago with Brian Kelly. So Lane Kiffin becomes the first. The first. Same man who was at one point the youngest coach to ever be hired into the National Football League at the ripe young age of 31. That record has since been surpassed by Sean McVay. A young man who was introduced to college football because of his dad at a very early age, had access that people only dreamed of when they're trying to create a career out of this. That young man this week showed us that he is at the pinnacle of the business that is college sports. And I'm just going to ask you simple and plain. Open-ended question. How would you rate Lane Kiffin's departure from Ole Miss going to LSU? And then it's layered, but I'll start there, open-ended. How would you grade it, if you will? His departure and the choices that he has made over the last week.
You know, it's hard to grade it. I try not to pocket watch, and and tell people like what's enough money and what's a good situation, whatever. I guess it depends on how you look at it. Like you said, it's Lane being Lane, so I'm not surprised. I knew there was no chance he wasn't going to take the job. It was just a matter of when and how he was going to do it. I think he was waiting to see if he was going to make the SEC championship game this weekend and hold out, see if he could leave as an SEC champ. Reports say that he was wanted to stay through the playoffs, but he was told not to. That makes sense.
His
But
reports, that was self-reported, but yes, it's worth
self-reported,
repeating.
self-reported, worth repeating that he wanted to stay through the end and do whatever. But that's lame. I mean, like if you look at it, he was at Tennessee for a year, and he left for USC, and then he gets fired. He was at
On the tarmac, he got fired
yeah,
in a very aggressive way. So
he got
I guess
fired
you know
after
what?
20 games at the Raiders. So I think and and Al Davis just called him a flat out liar. You know what I mean? When he fired him, he's like he's just a liar. So I just think he's Lane Kiffin. He doesn't give a damn about anybody or anything, and he's just a very convenient. He sees things conveniently, and he's doing what's best for him. Now taking that, hey Al, long time no see. Welcome back to the show. We haven't seen you in a while. Um, Alvin Miller, one of Notre Dame greats, watching our show. Appreciate that. We I think for me, he's just a social climber. He's just that guy that's
That's got
always
to be
just
a
looking for the
coin
next
term. What you
best
call a
thing.
social climber?
A social climber. In high school, you used to talk about that. People social climb, like they're hanging out with you until somebody cooler. You probably was the top of the mountain at your high school. You at the St. Thomas Aquinas of the greater Fort Lauderdale area. You were on the top of the heap. But there was people
I was
who
a
climbed
nerd,
their
man.
way into the Bobby Brown heap. Like for freshman year, they were hanging out with the band geeks. No offense
Mm-hmm.
to the band geeks. And then they got maybe they upgraded to theater sophomore year. Junior year, they walked, they got to be on the football team they came out for. And then by the senior year, they catch a pass. So now they
Yeah,
can hang out with Bobby. That's social climbing. And they
and that,
left
and
all
that,
the
and
band
you
geeks.
think
When they
that's
see the
Lane
band
Kiffin,
geeks in the hallway, they don't say hello. The
right?
theater people, I never knew that person. We were never tight. Lose my number. But now I hang out with B, social climber. So I think for him, he's just one of those people that he's going to take the next best thing. He doesn't care nothing about what he said and who he has to step on to get there. And we all know people like that.
The last show that we had, and thank you, Alvin. Thank you for everyone who's watching the live recording of this. And we ask you all, like we ask every week, please like, comment, share, tag a friend, tag a foe, tag anyone that you know, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel and to the podcast. But our last show, we were talking about return on investments, and so you were in the midst of giving Lane Kiffin a grade. So I'll let you finish that, but I'll also ask you, would you say this was a good return on the investment for Ole Miss when it's all said and done? Right? Men lie, women lie, numbers don't most times. When it's all said and done, Lane Kiffin is gonna go down as a very winning coach when it comes to Ole Miss, right? 55-19 record. Um, he has them in position to make the college football playoffs. I think it's certain that they would make it at this point. They're not playing in a conference championship.
They could potentially get played on the Florida State rule.
Florida State had a quarterback. I think that's a little
The
more.
in the same clause, it says we can make changes if you lose a major player or coach. They lost their entire coaching staff. So there's arguably, and this might be for another show when things get screwed up. The Florida State argument I have is Florida State played a game without that quarterback, and they won the ACC championship game without that quarterback. So they really got screwed. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they showed that they could win without him. Lane has nothing else to show or Ole Miss. And you're going to say, what about the kids? What about the kids last time? So
Right.
it's the same scrutiny. There's more reason not to let Ole Miss into the playoffs than there was.
Well, the college football committee, and we're going to get to the Notre Dame thing, has shown that there is no rhyme or reason behind some of the decisions. They talked about how, certain decisions were being made. And I'll just put it out there. Alabama jumping Notre Dame makes no sense to me. Alabama limped across the finish line against Auburn this week. And somehow, some way, jumped Notre Dame. Alabama, of all the losses among anybody we're talking about when it comes to college football playoffs, Alabama has the worst. Not only did they lose to Florida State, timing of it is on their side. It was the first game that's Labor Day weekend. But they got manhandled by a team that is, to quote Charles Barkley, terrible. Florida State's terrible.
They had to announce they weren't firing their coach.
They announced that they're not firing their coach.
I hope that my job never has announced, well, we're not going to fire.
We're not going to fire. You know you're in trouble when that happens.
Like, what?
So I'm saying that to say I don't think that we can count on this committee, this playoff committee, to even understand their own rules and adhere to them. But truth be told, like we shall see what the committee decides to do. I don't think that LSU, excuse me, Freudian slip. I don't think that Ole Miss will be penalized to the degree of not making it. But my question to you is, did Ole Miss get their sufficient return on investment? When it's all said and done, right? I talked about 55-19 record. Kiffin's record against ranked teams broadly is 13-25. Mm-hmm. And we're going to get to the LSU part because I really want to compare. It's interesting that we're talking about it, but return on investment, do you think Ole Miss walks away thinking, I got my money's worth, before we pivot and talk about how the things were done by Lane Kiffin?
Let's make a comparison so we can try to stay consistent. What was our consensus when we talked about Jackson State and Deion Sanders?
I felt like they got their money's worth. They became a household name. They garnered a lot more fanfare, but also a lot more financial support. Mm-hmm. And they got the opportunity for their young student athletes to get a significantly, sizably increased platform in terms of exposure. So I would say Jackson State absolutely got their return on investment when it comes to Coach Prime.
And what have we been saying kind of collectively about Colorado?
Same thing. They were 1-10 when he got there. Same thing. Very similar.
They got fanfare, proper coaches,
although they're in the red right now, but whatever.
Heisman Trophy, yeah, you know, that's just increase the debt ceiling. That's all they got to do. Look at the government.
It's American way, baby. Governmental.
Increase the debt ceiling. It'll be fine. So what are you gonna do? Foreclose on Colorado? They gonna close. Come on, what are we gonna do? So
I get your point. So you're saying from a position of consistency,
yeah,
you would argue that Ole Miss substitute.
We have
Jackson
to say
State,
right
Colorado.
Now, unless they get shit on with this playoffs, and they end up in some sort of a weird ass Pop-Tart bowl. No offense to the Pop-Tart bowl, because I do prefer strawberry. I cinnamon Pop-Tarts, but I digress. That's big activity to have conversations about snacks that one is unrelated. But anyway, I believe that you had to say, Ole Miss got good return on their investment. I mean, somebody's going to want that job. Oh, did they give it to the guy? I think they gave it to somebody off the staff.
Who's this? Ole Miss?
Ole Miss.
I'm not certain.
But I mean, they're going to lose a lot of their players. They're going to go through something. But you know, Ole Miss, you made it popular. We got Jackson Dart there. He got drafted. Then, you know, they had a good season anyway. They got this little quarterback dude from D2 guy came in. They brought in there, and I mean, they're in the playoffs. As of right now, they're in the playoffs. I mean, that's better. That's a lot better. Oh, yeah, the defensive coordinator got it, which I think is a smart move by Ole Miss to keep some stability as much as you can. First of all, so you don't lose your D coordinator. Second of all, just to keep some stability there. But they're better off than they were the year before. I mean, it's the SEC. So everyone in the SEC thinks that they're the best team ever and they're the greatest ever, and they have a chance to win the championship every year. But they're in the playoffs. So I think that if we think Deion did well, Deion did nothing compared to Lane Kiffin.
Fair, especially because you're talking about they still have an opportunity to get the ultimate trophy.
Yeah,
right. With everyone, the most highly coveted trophy is the trophy. So I'll ask a different question then, because I would agree with you. The way you put it that way, I like how you framed it. I would agree with you. Ole Miss gets their return on their investment sufficient enough to say it was worth the investment. It was worth the risk. If you think about the risk that they took, and when I say now I'm talking about LSU, because there's an old saying, and way back when we were bachelors, You know, how you get him is how you lose him.
Mm-hmm.
Fair.
Yeah.
If Lane Kiffin has shown you anything, he's shown you that he's willing to get his hat, his coat, and leave. If he's shown you anything, being the first ever college coach to forego the opportunity to lead his young people, the young men that he went into their living room with mom and them, auntie, grandma, and talked about how he was going to usher them through the college process, how he was going to build a successful program, how he was going to help them become successful in life beyond the football field, how he was going to do all that he could do to make their college football experience a pleasant one. He sat in them people's living room, and he is now stepping in the name of love right on out of there before they play in the college football playoffs. If he has shown you anything, he is willing to put Lane Kiffin before the kids. Now, we are going to get into the NCAA. We're going to get into the timeline being off. We're going to get into the conflict of interest that most of these coaches have. We're going to get into the fact that signing day was on yesterday, December 4th. And so you understand the motivation behind why Lane Kiffin did it. But now LSU, at a minimum, and some would argue has sealed their own fate. People are saying that LSU is the frog. You're going to get bit by the scorpion eventually. But LSU at a minimum has taken a risk, because if I want to know what you're going to do in the future, all I got to do is look to your behavior, what you've done in the past. LSU is at minimum taking a risk by bringing on Lane Kiffin and risking themselves, put themselves in a position that he's going to leave when the time is right. So how he left, let's analyze it. Right? He had to leave before the playoffs. Let's go step by step. If you don't want to give him all the blame, I'm fair with discussing that. But to leave before the playoffs, and you just sat in grandma and them living room and told them what you was going to do for their baby, what does that say about you as a man? And I get it as a coach, as an opportunist in terms of his family, right? I get all of them things, man. But man, it's tough for me to reconcile that. And I'm going to bring it full circle with another more entertainment version of this same story. But what would you say to LSU? Like, here you have this situation that is got a spotlight on what Lane Kiffin is willing to do for Lane Kiffin and the Kiffin family, and how if it undermines the progress and the opportunities of the institution and the young men that have gone out there and played to this 11-win season, oh well.
I would say here's the problem I have is, on paper, how can you say that Lane Kiffin is a better coach than Brian Kelly?
Tell me more.
And Brian Kelly had 5 10-win seasons in a row at Notre Dame, brought them to a national championship game. Lane Kiffin has never done that. Brian Kelly's never been fired until this year. It's the first job he's been fired from, or at least in a long time. Going back to Grand Valley State, he was national championship there. Then, went to Cincinnati. Then he went to Notre Dame. He won at all those places, built his resume strong. Then he went to LSU. He was still winning games. He wasn't winning championships, but he was winning games. He had some bad losses, but then he beat Bama. He had some key wins in there. Not act like he's just a complete failure. And they get rid of him. So Lane Kiffin has really only had one great stop. Oh, really? Ole Miss. What? Yeah. And how long has he been there? 2 years? 3 years?
Lane Kiffin has been there. He left FAU. He's been there. Well, let me think. He's been there 4 years.
4 years. And he's the last 2 years.
6 years.
6 years he's been at Ole Miss?
Yeah.
And so this year he made the playoffs. So did you give Brian Kelly 6 years to make the playoffs? I mean, so Lane Kiffin made the playoffs this year. He hasn't made it any other year. So what on Lane Kiffin's resume besides this year is great? He went to a bowl game last year. and they beat the shit out of Duke. And he bragged about that. He ran the score up on Duke, and he was like, "You don't think the SEC is the most dominant? Look what we just did to the 15th ranked team in the ACC. Fuck out of here." You know what I'm saying? So he hasn't done shit. And you got this snake oil salesman who's been fired, from on tarmacs, fired in the NFL, did whatever. Hasn't, I don't know if they won a national championship when he was offensive coordinator at Bama. I think they
I
didn't.
think they did. Yep. It was one
They
of the
did.
championships.
They won a championship with them?
Yep.
Okay.
I think that's before he went to FAU to take the head job. Now,
Got it.
because he's the Wolf of Wall Street because of how he was able to turn this thing around, or the Wolf of Wall Street, how he's able to turn this thing around. Yes, he did get fired on the tarmac at USC. Yes, he did have what was a very contentious departure from the Oakland Raiders. Al Davis literally said he's a flat out liar when talking about Lane Kiffin. And here's where I think
and
LSU,
you don't really hear that when you get people get fired.
You don't hear that at all.
You never hear negative. Hey, it was a great job. We had an opportunity here, man. We're just gonna part ways. We'll do whatever. They don't even talked about black coaches like that when they fire them. Lane Kiffin, you got fired worse than the black coaches. I mean, come on, man.
Flat out.
So now LSU just thinks they got this great guy. The buyout to, I was looking on the return on investment you mentioned. LSU has to pay Ole Miss $3 million for the buyout.
I think to be paid, by LSU,
to be paid, whatever. They put a lot of sliding scale, so he has a $7 million buyout that goes down to $1.5 million by 2031. So, I guess the buyouts, you can't put too big of a buyouts in these people's clauses to get them out. But I don't know. We'll see. I'm not rooting for you, Lane. I'll be honest. I'm not rooting for you.
You're not rooting for him. So let's say you're Lane's agent or your Lane's cousin. Do you think that it was a good move, right? And I'll ask it for this reason only because, look, you were making $9 million. Lane Kiffin was making $9 million at Ole Miss, where
and had that
11-win season and being one of those 12 teams is looked at as the beacon on the hill. That's golden status.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Kelly has been in the mix, but LSU is championship or bust. So now you went from $9 million to $13 million. I'm certain that Ole Miss was willing to negotiate the $9 million a year. Now you went to $13 million a year, and you're in the same conference.
They claimed they were going to match. There was stories that they were going to match.
You're in the same conference with more expectations. You're in the same conference with your predecessor having had some success, but not enough. And you're always going to be competing against that. The irony of this is when the previous athletic director hired Brian Kelly, he said all the things that you just talked about his pristine winning record, about how they brought him in and, he's won on every level, a D2 national championship, qualified for the college football playoffs. And you can't even say all those same things about Lane Kiffin without also pointing out his spots. The spot of he was only in Tennessee for 1 year. They were burning mattresses on the campus when he left. He left like a thief in the night with some BS press conference at midnight just to avoid the public backlash. He's done everything like a squirmy little, even as he's leaving Ole Miss, one of the young student reporters, was quoting, I think it was it was one of the songs, like a ludicrous song. He referred to him as a hoe because of the lyrics, not literally calling him a hoe. Lane Kiffin does a beeline to this young man and does a face-off. It's just everything he's done has been squirmy. Squirmy. I mean, as squirmy as you can be. And I just think that LSU is going to find out that he's a scorpion. And I just don't know that he can be anything else. Shout out to Lane Kiffin. That's why I call him the Wolf of Wall Street. Is he a savant or a savage? I think he's both. It depends on what day of the week you find him. He's got to be a savant to be able to reinvent himself. He pressed reset on his career, and now he is at the top of the mountain. He is second only to Kirby Smart in terms of annual income amongst current active college football college football coaches. He's only behind Kirby Smart, and he's got performance incentives in there that would put him ahead of Kirby Smart if he's able to do what he hopes to do, win a championship. And it's just interesting. Now, The irony of this is that Lane Kiffin, being the first coach to ever leave his team without a coach as they are ready for the college football playoffs, the irony of this is now the players have the same challenge. If you're not in pursuit of a championship, the transfer window opens on January the 4th, I think, and it closes on January the 16th. That means if you were in pursuit of a championship, because the championship game is not until January 19th down in Miami, you could have to opt out in order to transfer. Sorry, January 2nd is when the window opens, but January 16th
to be clear on that, you just have to get in a portal, but you could get in a portal and still play in the game. You probably would.
They're not going to let you play in that game when you're in the portal. Why would they?
Because they might want to win that bitch. If you want to do,
as soon as you, we have not seen that to date. When you get in the portal, we have not seen any school that has been, just like Lane Kiffin claims that he wanted to coach his team, which has since been refuted by some of the players. That he also said that his players wanted him to continue and coach them. They've refuted that part of it. At the end of the day, bro, if you're leaving, you gone. And that's the same thing with the transfer portal. Even more so, the institutional power has not allowed us to start wavering and negotiating with someone that is stated by way of entering the portal that they want to leave. They have since every single instance that I've heard of that once you enter the portal, you have now closed the door on that institution. Why would they do it? And whether it be Ole Miss or any of the other schools, when you enter the portal, that is those are your, those are your resignation documents. That is telling that institution that you are leaving. And so the university has an issue, right? Because LSU is trying to make sure that they have a head coach announced before signing day, which is December 4th. So the timing was they had to make that announcement, right?
Yeah.
But same thing with the student athlete that he's had some success at Ole Miss, but he wants to find another opportunity. If Ole Miss makes it to the championship, that athlete or whoever, fill in the blank with any of the 12 teams that make it, is faced with quite the dilemma. And so I think the timeline is archaic. I think the new modified window for what is now the only transfer portal window is archaic and outdated. And I think that the NCAA continues to fail in terms of keeping up with the innovation and evolution of this business that is the college football world.
Well, one of the problems is that it constantly is going to get in the way is the academic calendar, right? Everything can be fixed with the academic calendar. So the bottom line is you got to get into school. School's going to start in, January or whatever. And, you got to kind of have your chance to make your visits, see the schools. Like you got to think what's the top priority if you're in the transfer portal. Is you're visiting the schools, make your decision. What's the top priority for most schools in December? Is their bowl game or whatever? There's just not time for it. And then you got to get into the school. And so there's just everything's crammed. The only way to fix it is to start the football season in the middle of August, which I really don't know why they don't do it, to be honest with you. Start it in the middle of August. I guess it's because school doesn't start. And then try to have the national championship game on January 1st like we used to. Go through the month of December and have all the bowl games and have the playoffs and everything there and be done. If you try to, accelerate that a little bit, you could help it. But okay, I always come back to my the big, my son's experience. My son is his fourth year of school. Every single year, the transfer portal has changed. Every year, the rules have changed completely. They tore up the last one and started a new one. So this is the only transfer portal for the entire year, right? Which means it's going to be so important for people to get things right for the spring, but you don't know who's going to be in the portal, who you're going to lose, who's going to go pro, who's going to do this. The NFL draft isn't going to be I think you have until February I think you do, right? To
declare. They've moved that back as well in order you can declare and then make yourself still eligible. But yeah.
So hold on a second.
I like that comment. My man Mustafa says Lane Kiffin and Will Wade are my heroes. Will Wade on the basketball side, he about that bread. All about the Benjamins. Lane is the wolf of Ball Street. He rocking it. He balling on these boys, man. But really interesting times, man. I'll give you
So
final word on it.
January 15th is when you're supposed to the deadline for the draft. So now you could be sitting there on January 15th wondering as a quarterback if your man is coming back next year or if he's going to the draft. And you sit like these waiting. And then he decides and you got one day to decide. And then you're also not supposed to have talked to the colleges first to vet the process. It's
We
just
know that's
set
a
up.
joke, but whatever. Right?
But it's so rife for people to just kill the rules. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't take enough into. They just make these decisions based off one little thing. But then you're going to go into the spring. Lane's going to go down to this school right now. He doesn't even know his personnel. He doesn't know who's coming with him. He doesn't know who's not coming with him. He's going to go into the spring, and not that I care about Lane Kiffin, but he's going to go into the spring not really knowing exactly what he has. And then when he finds out what he doesn't have, he can't do nothing about it. The only people, you know who's going to really win? Finally, the little guy's going to win. The guy that goes
they're going to get the leftovers, right?
The leftovers are going to
fall to them.
The guys
are going to.
They're going to. Everybody who gets in the portal and can't find a home, just wait. After spring, people are going to get hurt. It's like the guys in the NFL that got cut.
The group of 5 schools, I think, are going to benefit most from this. I would agree with you. And even Division II and like go down. It's going to be,
from a school standpoint, I don't know how that would work. Why you say that? Why do you think that those guys will benefit the most?
The group of 5?
Yeah.
Because I think that they're going to have the opportunities to get the kids that didn't find a home in the Power 4 space that are in this weird mix. It's like the NCAA doesn't realize its own rules. It's like your timeline is undermining your timeline. And you're putting these coaches and the players, right? Because if you're not one of those teams pursuing a national championship, you're not one of those 12, all the other bowl games have become sort of meaningless, right? And truth be told, how we villainized. We made some of these players that decided to opt out of bowl games over the last several years. They were pariahs. They couldn't even, some of those kids young people can't even go back to the campus and be received by their former program because the program felt like you left us high and dry. Fast forward, and you have 2 people connected by the same university. We talked about Lane Kiffin, but if you think about it, Brian Kelly did the same thing. He was at a recruit's house in their living room recruiting with one of his assistant coaches and has LSU on the phone. Steps out and talks to LSU. Now, the only difference, and that's why we're saying Lane Kiffin is the first coach to ever leave his team high and dry that qualified for the playoffs, is that year, the committee decided, it wasn't 12 teams yet, decided that Notre Dame missed it by a photo finish. But we would have been saying the same thing. If you think about it, it's the exact same situation, which is why I look at LSU and it's like, man, burn me once, shame on you. But burn me twice, they have nobody to blame but themselves when this inevitably comes to a screeching halt and a very ugly divorce. They have nobody to blame but themselves. Because if anybody should have known, how you get him is how you lose him. What's the saying? I don't remember what it was. It's a while ago.
I'll never lose, so I don't know how I would know. I wouldn't know how you
that's for you mere mortals.
But, ask a loser. If you'd like to know that, ask a loser. You're talking to a winner right now, baby. You're talking to a get him. And I can't tell you how I get them because, you know what I'm saying, that's secret. But I would say this. LSU, they went out there, that guy who they thought was the best guy, the hottest guy. They just brought it, whatever. So I can't blame LSU for doing that. If they didn't want Brian Kelly anymore, they had to hire somebody. And all the other coaches were locking. There's not a lot of good coaches. Lane Kiffin, I would say, is the hottest name that was available.
Yeah,
that you probably could get. You know what I mean? You got, who's going to leave other places. But, I like to take a page out of I can't remember his name, the Indiana coach. Cignetti's book and Indiana's book. As soon as the thing started getting sexy, they threw money at Cignetti, locked him up. This man is number 2
at Vanderbilt. That's the irony of it. A lot of Brian Kelly's boys got paid.
Yeah.
Everybody got paid. Yeah. Marcus Freeman, Lee, and Vanderbilt, everybody got paid.
Lock your boys up, man. You know what? It's cuffing season. Take your wife out to dinner. It's cuffing season. People are coming. Take your wife out, play someplace nice. Make sure you don't lose it to somebody who's out there thirstier than you.
Five.
But it is what it is. At the end of the day, Lane did what Lane did. He's a Scorpion, and he's going for whatever the thing is hot, and that's how he's going to live his life. That's not how I would have taken Ole Miss and tried to make a legacy there. That's how I would have done it.
Five.
So I split pots in poker. Texas Hold'em, I split pots too. So I'm conservative.
So you the one fantasy football, you in the championship. Like, let's agree that
that's me.
I feel you. Guaranteed money is better than. But I'll ask you this, man: is he made it 6 years at Ole Miss, over under 6 years at LSU?
My money's on the under. For sure.
Your money's on the under. He didn't win a championship.
He only made it 6 years at LSU because Ole Miss, like he said, he just made the playoffs now. You're not getting 6 years to make the playoffs at LSU.
No, not especially after your predecessor was on a short leash the whole time.
Yeah.
Do you think he wins a championship? And this is just a binary yes or no question. No. Does he win a championship at LSU?
No.
Now, if he wins a championship, I think he's out. If he doesn't win a championship, I think he's out without.
So that's why that's good money. They may take that off the board. The over-under, they may take it off the board in Vegas. For those of you who don't gamble, is when there's a bet that they don't like it, they just take it off the board. I don't even want it.
My man Chufu, what's up, cheeky?
Have I ever been to Oxford? I have not been to Oxford.
I've never been to
Oxford. Is there problems?
I hear it's a great place to watch a game, though.
I hear you got to wear a suit and tie to the game.
I'm not going to Oxford with. I'm not going with Lane Kiffin. You left us at the altar, dog. We qualified for the playoffs. And you talked about all of these things and said you wanted the coach's thing and this magical. Yeah, I should have known 6 years because he said it in the press conference. The 6 years. And man, don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining. Get the hell out of here. Kick rocks. That's one person I would not go to Oxford with. He is persona non grata. He should be. He was persona non grata in Tennessee, and he should be. He was fired on the tarmac in USC. And to be truthful, he should have been. When the Oakland Raiders, Al Davis said he's a flat-out liar, and it was a very controversial divorce. I just don't know how he still is so hireable. That's the thing that's the dilemma to me. I'll leave it there. Let's go with this, man, because there's another thing, Ball Off Sports Talk, where sports business and entertainment collide. There's another thing in pop culture this week. Netflix is showing this thing called The Reckoning. And I like, while the title is The Reckoning, I want to, when this title, Pride Before the Fall, when you think of this title and you think of all the things that are going on in sports this week, and the ones that we're going to deal with at least, I like the idea that when it comes to a head, when the rubber meets the road, when you finally have all of that hubris catch up with you, we're going to call it The Reckoning. But there is a documentary on Netflix that is eating up the social media worlds and the conversations and the chats about a man named Diddy. Ironically, Diddy, this Puffy, Sean Puffy Combs, whatever you want to call him. Ironically, this documentary is being brought to you by way of 50 Cent. And so
there's nothing ironic about that.
The irony of that is Pride Before the Fall, and this Pride Before the Fall episode is when you think of Diddy, he was larger than life. And you think about 50, larger than life. The only reason that I'm not going to say the only reason, there's probably some financial reasons too. But I would argue that the primary motivation for 50 Cent wanting to be a part of this, in addition to the money, was he doesn't like that the man that's also from New York is also larger than life. He doesn't like that the mogul title that has been bestowed upon Diddy is one that, if you're ranking them, you're still going to rank Diddy a higher mogul than 50 Cent, right? If you think about the fact that the content used for this documentary, right, was produced largely by a crew hired by Diddy. This is the quintessential Pride Before the Fall. If you look at this whole conversation, whatever the lawsuits that come from this, and we shall see. But if you think about the things that, and I have not watched any of the 4-part documentary series yet of The Reckoning. I know you told me you have, right?
Mm-hmm.
You described it this way, that you saw, and this is not spoiler alert, this is very high level, that you saw some above the law, untouchable themes when you saw the footage of Diddy. You saw a lot of victim mentality when he was talking about his situation and a lack of accountability. And then you also saw extreme narcissism. That's Lane Kiffin. That's Brian Kelly. And that, unfortunately, is college football right now. And I think the reckoning is going to happen with Lane Kiffin, whether it be 5, 6 years or not, or sooner. And LSU ain't gonna have nobody blame but themselves.
Let's be fair to Lane Kiffin, because I'm not a fan, but I'll say there's a certain level of full of shitness that you have to take on to be a head coach in this game, because you have an impossible task ahead of you in certain regards, right? You have 85 people on the team that you're going to bring on scholarship. I don't know. Now 120 people, 105 people on your team that you're going to bring in. Some are going to be walk-ons, some whatever. You have to convince each and every one of them that you like them and that you think they're going to have a good chance and they're going to be fair. There's going to be certain level of guys that you're going to be completely honest with, but most people you're going to lie to at least a little bit. You're going to be, you're going to hedge on the side of overselling some situation you're in. Your other coaches that are on your staff, the same thing. You're going to have to oversell some of them on their roles and their opportunities and what's going to be right. It's a bunch of people that you have to kind of sell, right? A lot of selling. What does selling mean? I want to say lying, but selling means you got to make things sound to be different than they appear on their own, right?
Embellishing.
Yeah. If I showed you a picture of me, I wouldn't have to sell that. You're just going to buy it sight on scene. Or see just on sight. You're going to picture. But if it comes down to me saying, well, look, man, I got to try to convince this person I weigh less than 300, right? I'm going to start trying to make comparisons and fudge. I'm not that far from the truth, but it's a lie at the end of the day.
But here's my issue with Lane. You told somebody that you were selling them a V12 and it was a V4. You lied at the core. If you tell someone in their living room that you're going to do whatever you need to do to be in the best interest of the young person navigating this experience that is college football, and now that kid is walking through the door of the college football playoffs with a chance to get the ultimate prize, the trophy, the national championship, and your simple ass is leaving because it behooves you and it's in your best interest. You sold me a V4 and told me it's a V12, dog.
And that's I'm more telling than you that there's 5% of coaches that, like, we use the word narcissist, I think you did, and I think that 5% of are not narcissistic and would do that. The guys who would split pots in poker, which are probably very rare as far as head coaches, the guys who would split pots, the ones who would be like, you know what, I'm going to stay here forever. I'm going to take this kind of job because I'm looking at the long term. But these fast money guys, they're going to joke. Anybody who wants to leave college and go to the NFL is a fast money guy. You bet on yourself. You think I can go do whatever, because the best thing you could do is be at an Ole Miss or Northwestern or some of these other schools out here, Vanderbilt, and do. Clark Lee will never be fired from Vanderbilt if there's not a scandal. He's there forever.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, you look at Shiano at Rutgers. That man not only he left and was able to come back. That's the ultimate example.
Yeah, because you're in a safe program that's not expecting championships every year. Ole Miss ain't never had a championship, so they're not expecting one. You get a couple big name recruits to come on campus. You get some exciting games. It's the SEC. They're going to be profitable, selling money. People love going there. They're doing, they're attracting people from different parts of the country. You're already winning. So, but the at the end of the day, I just think that all coaches are full of shit to a certain extent, and you have to be, otherwise you couldn't. If you were honest as hell as a coach, completely honest, you would fail.
Yeah. Fair. I'll leave it there. You get last word. What up, man? That's Kyle, bro, in the building. My guy down from ATL, a Miami Hurricane fan. You did not miss the conversation. It's coming up.
You ain't ready for it though, so you might want to
ready
log out.
We gonna get to it. Before we get there, man, because we talked about Diddy, and I saw one of the comments. My man Chufu says Diddy looks like the devil. And the reason I did that, I start off with Lane Kiffin and then went to The Reckoning, is because while that particular comment is probably shared commonly among the people who have seen the documentary. I would argue that you could substitute Diddy for Lane Kiffin. When it comes to the UT,
Lane got to be watching the show like, damn, I'm Diddy now.
not in the same sense of his grave offenses and the depth of, but if you ask Tennessee fans what his 1 year did there and him leaving in the middle of the night and what that has done for their program, that thought that this was the man that they were hiring to get them back on track, you damn right they think he's the devil. And if you ask Ole Miss fans right now today, you're damn right. They probably think he's the devil too. But the example in terms of the pride before the fall, I think is very pointed. We'll see if Lane has success there.